Hey guys, welcome back to the Cozy Writing channel. So I think I've finally cracked the whole outlining this novel thing. Now, I know this whole month I have been up, I've been down, I've questioned myself, I've been overconfident, I've given myself some very ambitious goals, most of which I didn't reach. But last week things just kind of came to a head in that I was staring at the screen and I didn't know what to do. Like, every idea I had just felt like it led me down another rabbit hole and things were getting more tangled and more complicated. And I just didn't like the way it was coming together. So I put the brakes on. I did a full stop. I just walked away from it. I just couldn't deal with it anymore. And you know how you get sometimes where you just don't have any more F's to give. That's just kind of how I was. Like, in the middle of my scheduled writing session, I just got up from my desk and I walked away. I just could not do it anymore. So I did that late last week and I gave myself the weekend, and Sunday night, instead of being like a social conversive person with my husband, I went to bed early. But instead of sleeping, I did like the whole light deprivation thing. I put on a sleeping mask and I put headphones in my ears and I played a playlist. I spent 2.5 hours just laying in bed like a complete moron. No light, just listening, just thinking, and I worked it all out. At the time, I didn't realize I'd worked it all out. I put myself in the main character's shoes and thought about the last book. And just kind of went naturally from there. Okay, what are they still afraid of? What are they still worried about? What was not solved in the last book that needs to be touched on in this book? And I thought of a few main scenes that just kind of flowed together. And then I thought of an antagonist, and I was like, okay, I think this works. Like, I was going over it in my head. I liked the ideas. So the next day I got up, so that would be Monday, yes. So Monday I got up and I just wrote them all down. I got to my plotting software and I just wrote them all down on scene cards and just threw them in. I didn't worry about what order I was putting them in. I didn't worry about rearranging things. I just literally, just as they popped in my head, as I remembered them from what I was working on the night before, I just put them in. And then I started rearranging them. And then I took a step back and I looked at it, I'm like, there's actually almost a whole novel here. Like, the whole thing was almost done just from that basically 2.5 hour session of thinking. I just hadn't realized it at the time. The only thing I really needed to work out was how it came together in Act 3 towards the end. So I decided to work backwards. I knew how I wanted the novel to end, and I knew what the beginning was, so I kind of thought like, okay, what's my midpoint? What's going to get me from point A to point C? And it was pretty obvious with the work I'd already done the night before. Like, oh, okay, clearly that's the midpoint. And then I was able to work out the plot points, and then I was able to work out the pinch points. And then, like, yesterday afternoon, I'm staring at the computer and I'm like, shit, this is done. It's not a rough draft style like I usually do, but all the parts are there. What my goal is right now, I'm just working on the rough draft style of this. I'm going through and I'm doing something really dumb. I'm doing something new, and I don't know if it's really dumb. In that, instead of writing them by chapters in my rough draft, I'm calling them episodes in my head, which seems cheesy now that I'm saying it out loud. But I'm calling them episodes, and it's helping me, like, just that weird little word change is helping me figure out how I think the story should unravel, especially if in my head I see it kind of like on that internal screen in my brain. So I'm taking an unconventional approach for me. I usually like to write point of view one chapter, next point of view next chapter. Like, that's just generally how I roll. So, but I'm taking a break from that, and I'm experimenting. And in the course of episode/chapter, I'm writing one point of view and then giving a break and then writing a little bit of another point of view and then going back to the other point of view. I'm trying not to pop around too much because I know that will be really annoying and confusing. But I'm trying to take breaks inside the chapter and tell you what else is happening in another part of the story. And I don't know if that's stupid. I feel like only time is going to tell. Like, once I get done with the first draft and I go back and I read it, either I'm going to say, this works, or I'm going to say, this is shit. Why the hell did I do this? And then have to tear it all apart and put them back in orders. So that's where I am right now. I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm a little apprehensive because this isn't normally the way I work, but this is the way it's working at the moment. And technically I'm ahead of my schedule. It's the 24th and I have the whole book outlined and I wanted that done by the 30th. So technically I'm ahead of schedule. Technically, on the other hand, I'm way far behind because the way I was outlining previously when I gave myself those deadlines, I was already doing the rough draft. So that first deadline was like, hey, rough draft is done by the end of January. That's not going to happen unless I get some crazy spurt of like inspiration and time. Let's not forget the time factor. Then I'll actually get this done by the end of January. But I'm not rushing that. In other news, I've come up with a temporary title for book 2. At the moment, I'm calling it Dark Witch Hunted, which, saying that out loud doesn't sound as cool as it sounded in my head. But with the first book called Dark Witch Rising, it seemed kind of a natural progression because that also explains what's happening in the plot. But I'm just not sure if it's a great fit. So, temporary title, I'm not sticking with it. I'll have talk to the agent and the editor and everybody and see what they think when the book is done. Speaking of editor, I heard back from my editor and he is almost done. He basically said, I need 2 more days. I'm not quite finished, so hopefully by tomorrow I will have something from him with the first of the notes, and then while I'm writing the rough draft for book 2, I also need to work on the edits for book 1. So I'm about to get very, very busy. Hopefully a good busy. I like being busy. I don't like being pulled in a million directions busy because that overloads my brain and it just malfunctions and I get crabby and I get frustrated and nothing seems to go well at that point. I think I've babbled long enough / procrastinated long enough. I need to stop talking. I need to start working because, as I just said, I'm suddenly about to get super busy and I need to get as much work done as I can. Whew.